If you were going to invent a religion from scratch, you probably wouldn't start your foundational text with a really tedious 42-generation legal document.
No, you definitely wouldn't. It's not exactly a page-turner.
Right, and you almost certainly wouldn't end it with your founder being stripped, mocked, and publicly tortured to death as a state criminal.
Definitely not a conventional PR strategy, that's for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that is exactly what the Gospel of Matthew does. So, welcome to this deep dive. We are really thrilled to have you with us today to explore this.
It is a profound pleasure to be here. I mean, we are digging into a text that fundamentally shaped human history.
Mhm.
And doing so really requires us to look past the cultural assumptions we bring to it today.
Absolutely, because when you actually open the book of Matthew, you realize very quickly that it's not a sanitized museum exhibit.
Right.
It's not just a collection of pleasant moral sayings meant to go on a greeting card. It is a highly complex, historically grounded, and politically charged narrative. And it's built around one intensely polarizing question.
Which is, who is this figure? Jesus of Nazareth, really?
Exactly. Who is he really?
And that is the central thesis of the entire document. I mean, every lineage, every sermon, every conflict in Matthew's account is meticulously curated to force the reader, to force you, the listener, to grapple with that exact question.
And here is how we're going to explore this for you today. I am going to lean into the role of the skeptic, focusing on the text itself. Because when you read Matthew, there is overwhelming textual evidence of a very messy, ordinary, and heavily opposed human life.
Yeah, it's definitely not a smooth ride for him.
Not at all. People were constantly challenging this guy. His own neighbors rejected him. So we really have to take that historical grit seriously.
I agree. And my role will be to unpack the literary and historical mechanics of the text, because woven directly into that messy human reality, Matthew is making these radical, subversive claims about divine authority.
And ancient prophecies, right?
Exactly. The author is demanding that we hold two seemingly contradictory ideas in our heads at the exact same time: a traceable, flesh-and-blood human being and unprecedented divine authority.
Well, let's test that tension right out of the gate, because if this is supposed to be a grand narrative about a divine figure, the opening is structurally bizarre.
You're talking about chapter 1.
Yeah, chapter 1.
Yeah.
It reads like taking a modern DNA ancestry test and just reciting the raw data out loud. It says, Abraham begat Isaac and Isaac begat Jacob, and it just keeps going.
It really does. It's a long list.
It forces this character into a very terrestrial family tree filled with deeply flawed historical figures. From a narrative perspective, it just feels entirely earthbound.
It feels earthbound to a modern ear, sure. But we have to look at this through the lens of a first-century Jewish audience. I mean, they were living under Roman military occupation.
Okay, so how did they hear it?
To them, that genealogy is not a dry legal document. It is a highly explosive political resume.
Wait, really? A list of names is politically explosive.
Oh, absolutely. Notice how Matthew meticulously structures this list into 3 distinct sets of 14 generations. He is methodically connecting Jesus to Abraham, the father of the Jewish people, and to David, the greatest king of Israel.
Right.
The nation of Israel at this time had no king. They were subjugated by Rome. So by opening with this specific genealogy, Matthew is establishing a legal, historical claim to a vacant ancient throne.
Ah, I see. So he's answering the immediate societal question of whether this man has the historical credentials to claim the title of the promised Messiah.
Precisely. He's laying the historical groundwork.
Okay, so he's building a watertight case for a human king.
Yeah.
But then the author immediately shatters the very historical pattern he just spent 17 verses building.
He does. It's a massive pivot.
Yeah, the long list of begats brings us to Joseph, the husband of Mary, and then the biological chain just snaps.
It's a brilliant narrative turn. The text explicitly states that before they came together, Mary was found with child of the Holy Spirit.
Which introduces an incredible scandal into this royal lineage. I mean, Joseph, understandably, wants to quietly break off the engagement.
Does, yeah, until an angel appears to him in a dream. And this is where Matthew connects the human scandal to a divine mechanism.
Right.
The angel tells Joseph to name the child Jesus, which means Yahweh saves. And then Matthew immediately quotes the ancient prophet Isaiah, pointing out that this fulfills the prophecy of a virgin bringing forth a son who will be called Emmanuel.
Which the text helpfully translates for us as God with us.
Exactly. So right in the first chapter, the author sets up his core literary framework. The genealogy provides the historical legal right to rule. but the conception by the Holy Spirit provides an origin that is entirely outside of human history.
So he's the culmination of Israel's human lineage, but his actual origin is divine.
You nailed it. He is fully grounded in history, but not bound by it.
So Matthew establishes this profound duality on paper. But, paper is one thing. When this Emmanuel figure actually grows up, walks out of the carpentry shop, and starts interacting with the public, how does that duality actually play out?
That's where things get really complicated.
Because when you look at his actual ministry, the pushback he gets is intense, especially from the people who know his earthly family best.
You were talking about the reaction in his hometown of Nazareth in chapter 13.
Yes. The hometown crowd is a perfect case study. He goes back home, and his neighbors are not throwing him a parade. In fact, they are deeply offended.
Yeah, they really are.
They literally say, is not this the carpenter's son? Is not his mother called Mary? And his brothers, James and Joses and Simon and Judas, they know his whole family tree, the exact same family tree Matthew just outlined for us.
It is the ultimate case of familiarity breeding contempt.
I mean, think about it from their perspective. It's like your childhood friend from down the street, like the one whose dad fixed your kitchen table, suddenly standing up in your local community center and claiming ultimate world-altering authority.
It's a bitter pill to swallow, for sure.
You'd look at them and say, I know your mom. You're just a guy.
And this wasn't limited to the working class people in his hometown either.
Yeah.
The religious elites, the chief priests, they had the exact same reaction, just in a different venue later in chapter 21.
Oh, right, in the temple.
Exactly. They confront him and demand, by what authority do you do these things? And who gave you this authority?
Which, honestly, is a completely rational question. They are looking at a man with no formal rabbinical credentials, no institutional backing, making absolute claims over their most sacred spaces.
It is entirely rational. And to understand why both the hometown crowd and the religious elites were so deeply threatened, we have to look at the mechanism of his teaching.
Okay, let's look at that.
Look back at the end of the Sermon on the Mount in chapter 7. Matthew notes that the massive crowds listening were completely astonished at his doctrine. And the text gives a very specific reason why.
What was it?
It says he taught as one having authority and not as the scribes.
Break that down for us. What was the standard operating procedure for a scribe or a religious teacher in the first century?
Well, the scribes derived their authority entirely from tradition and citation. They taught by quoting older, established authorities.
Kind of like citing sources in an academic paper.
Exactly. They would say, Rabbi Hillel says this about the law, and Rabbi Shammai says that. It was an academic debate rooted in the past. Jesus completely bypassed that structure.
How so?
Throughout the Sermon on the Mount, his repeated refrain is, you have heard that it was said by them of old time, but I say to you.
But I say to you, wow, he's not quoting a higher authority. He's claiming to be the higher authority.
Precisely. He is taking the sacred law of Moses, which is the very foundation of their society, and redefining it, deepening it on his own personal authority. He is speaking as the source of the truth, rather than just a commentator on it.
And that creates an untenable social tension. You have a society looking at a carpenter with no formal schooling who is speaking with the authority of the divine lawgiver.
It's a massive disruption.
Historically, when someone makes claims like that, society forces a confrontation. You cannot have someone walking around upending the established order without a fracture occurring. And we see that collision happen when his own followers are forced to make a definitive choice about his identity.
Yeah, that brings us to a masterclass in narrative tension in the middle of the gospel in chapter 16. Jesus pulls his disciples aside in Caesarea Philippi and essentially conducts a public opinion poll.
Right.
He asks them, whom do men say that I, the Son of Man, am?
First, let's just pause on that phrase, Son of Man, because to a modern ear, that just sounds like he's emphasizing his humanity, like he's just saying, hey, I am a human being.
And that is a crucial distinction we need to make. To a first-century Jewish audience, Son of Man was a highly specific, highly radioactive callback to the book of Daniel.
Radioactive in what way?
It refers to a cosmic figure who receives an everlasting kingdom and judgment from God. So by using that title, he's dropping a massive apocalyptic hint while asking a seemingly casual question about his public reputation.
And the public reputation is just pure chaos. The disciples tell him that some people think he's John the Baptist brought back to life. Others say Elijah or Jeremiah or one of the prophets.
Everyone has a theory.
To me, this is like trying to diagnose a medical symptom by asking the internet. You type in headache and you get 50 different contradictory theories on WebMD.
That is a great way to look at it. The public consensus is high praise. Certainly, they think he's a great prophet, but it falls entirely into the category of human achievement.
Right, it's still an earthbound explanation.
Exactly. It proves that even the massive crowds following him around didn't fully comprehend the nature of his claims.
But the author doesn't let the narrative rest on public opinion. Jesus turns the question directly to his inner circle. He strips away the buffer of what other people think and asks, "But whom say you that I am?"
He demands a personal verdict.
And Peter is the one who steps into that silence. He utters the ultimate text-defining realization of the gospel. He doesn't say, "You're a great teacher." He says, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God."
That is a total paradigm shift. It completely elevates the subject out of the category of prophet or reformer.
Yeah.
But what I find fascinating is how the text explains Peter's ability to even arrive at that conclusion.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Jesus responds by saying, "Blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah, for flesh and blood has not revealed it to you, but my Father, which is in heaven." Matthew is explicitly arguing that Peter didn't figure this out through human deduction.
Right, it wasn't because Peter was the smartest guy in the room or because he, connected the dots on a whiteboard.
No, not at all. The narrative claims that understanding this dual identity, the human carpenter who is also the divine son, requires a mechanism beyond human logic. It requires direct revelation from the divine.
Okay, so Peter makes this grand confession. It's a triumphant high point in the narrative. But claiming to be the Son of God in Roman-occupied Judea is, well, it's a death sentence.
It absolutely is.
It's a direct threat to both the religious establishment and the Roman Empire, which viewed Caesar as the son of a god. And this is where my skepticism really kicks into high gear regarding the text's internal logic.
Okay, let's hear it. Where does the logic break down for you?
It breaks down at the crucifixion in chapter 27. Because if Matthew's entire goal is to prove this guy is the divine Son of God with ultimate authority, having him publicly executed seems to completely dismantle the thesis.
It definitely seems that way on the surface.
He is subjected to the absolute ultimate human humiliation. He is stripped of all agency. He is beaten, nailed to a piece of wood, and left to suffocate.
It is the starkest possible contrast to the authority he displayed when teaching on the mountain.
And the text doesn't shy away from how deeply he is mocked. The passers-by specifically target the very identity we've been discussing. They wag their heads and shout, "If you be the Son of God, come down from the cross."
They're throwing his own claims right back at him.
Exactly. The religious leaders use his own claims as a weapon, saying, "He trusted in God, let him deliver him now, for he said, 'I am the Son of God.'" They are demanding a physical display of power as proof of his identity.
They want the spectacular. They want the Hollywood ending where the hero breaks the chains and defeats his enemies.
But he doesn't come down. Instead, we get what might be the darkest moment in ancient literature. He cries out with a loud voice, my God, why have you forsaken me?"
It's incredibly bleak.
I have to stop you here. To an outside observer, to anyone standing on that hill in the first century crying out, "Why have you forsaken me?" looks like absolute defeat. It looks like the ultimate proof that he wasn't who he said he was. How does the author possibly frame this moment of utter physical and emotional destruction as a victory? Where is Emmanuel now?
That's a brilliant question. If you analyze the text strictly through the lens of human political power, it is a complete failure.
Right.
But Matthew is doing something incredibly sophisticated here from a literary and theological perspective. He weaves the ultimate proof of his thesis directly into the environment of the execution.
Okay, so what is the mechanism for that?
Look at what Matthew records happening at the exact moment Jesus yields his spirit. The text states that the veil of the temple was rent in two from the top to the bottom.
Okay, let's explain the veil for you listening, because that detail is really easy to gloss over. Think of the Holy of Holies inside the Jewish temple, like the ultimate VIP room of the ancient world.
That's a great analogy.
It was the physical dwelling place of God's presence on earth, guarded by the highest level security clearance imaginable. A massive thick curtain separated it from the rest of humanity. Only one guy, the high priest, gets to go behind it, and only once a year.
Right. That veil represented the profound, unbridgeable separation between a holy God and humanity. But Matthew writes that at the moment of the crucifixion, this massive curtain is torn in two.
And crucially, he notes it is torn from top to bottom.
Yes, from top to bottom.
Implying that the tearing was a divine action, not a human one. Like nobody stood on a ladder and cut it.
Precisely. From a literary standpoint, Matthew is arguing that the security system has been bypassed from the inside. The separation is gone. The death itself accomplishes what the life and the teachings were pointing toward: direct, unmediated access to the divine.
So the narrative argues that the cross wasn't the dismantling of his mission, it was the mechanism of it.
Exactly. And the text pairs this theological tearing of the veil with the physical tearing of the earth. Matthew notes a massive earthquake. The rocks split.
The physical world is reacting.
Yes, the physical world reacts violently to the death of this figure. But the absolute climax of this scene, the final definitive answer to the question, who is this, doesn't come from Peter. It doesn't come from a religious scholar.
No, it comes from the most subversively brilliant source the author could have chosen: an executioner.
Yes, a Roman centurion. Think about the political weight of this character. This is a hardened, polytheistic military man who has likely overseen dozens, maybe hundreds, of brutal state executions.
Right, he's seen it all.
He represents the oppressive empire that put Jesus on the cross. He is sworn to Caesar. Yet Matthew tells us that when this centurion saw the earthquake and the manner in which Jesus died, he feared greatly.
And he delivers the verdict. He says, truly, this was the Son of God.
It is a stunning piece of writing. The divine identity that was announced by an angel in a private dream in chapter 1, the identity that was recognized by a loyal Jewish insider in chapter 16, is ultimately and publicly confirmed by a pagan enemy soldier at the foot of a Roman cross.
The narrative symmetry is just incredible. It forces you to realize that, according to Matthew, the ultimate display of divine authority wasn't in calling down an army to escape the cross. The authority was in choosing to endure it.
The text demands that the reader see power in the willing submission to the ultimate human vulnerability.
So, as we bring this deep dive to a close for you, let's look at the grand picture Matthew has painted. The gospel presents a figure that rigorously defies easy categorization.
He really does.
On one hand, the text insists on a gritty, undeniable human reality. He is a carpenter's son with a deeply flawed family tree, a man who faced fierce hometown criticism, who sweat, who bled, and who was publicly executed.
Yet running parallel to that human reality is the unwavering claim that he is Emmanuel. He is conceived by the Holy Spirit. He commands an authority that bypasses all human institutions. He redefines ancient laws, and he is recognized as the Son of God, even as his human body fails him.
Yeah.
The Gospel of Matthew refuses to let you pick just one of those realities. It locks them together.
Which brings us to a final thought for you to explore on your own. We've covered his origins, his polarizing teachings, the demands he made on his followers, and his execution. But the Gospel of Matthew doesn't end with the centurion's confession. It doesn't end in a graveyard.
No, it doesn't. The final chapter, chapter 28, introduces the claim of an empty tomb, a resurrection.
And it ends with a mandate, a directive for his followers to take this message to the entire world. And his final recorded words in this text are not a cry of abandonment. His final words are a promise. I am with you always, even to the end of the world.
Emmanuel, God with us, right up to the very last sentence.
Remember that idea of the polished museum exhibit we talked about at the beginning? The kind of history that keeps figures safely locked in the past, behind a pane of glass where they can't bother us.
The author of Matthew goes to extraordinary lengths to shatter that glass.
If you're listening to this, Matthew's text presents a direct challenge. It presents a historical figure who claims ultimate cosmos-altering authority and then claims to have defeated the grave. It leaves you with a profoundly personal question.
And what is that?
If the text's central claim demands a verdict, and if this figure promises to be with his followers always, what does that mean for you right now, wherever you are listening?